Democratic Congressman André Carson of Indiana. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Matt Miller, former spokesperson for Attorney General Eric Holder, is with us. He's an MSNBC contributor. And Nicholas Kristof, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times, who has written extensively on foreign affairs, is also with us. Congressman Carson, I want to start with you and the new revelations today about the Trump administration's reach to Australia now, in addition to Ukraine, looking for help in rehabilitating Donald Trump's campaign image in relation to the Mueller investigation.
Well, thank you for having me, Lawrence. I think it's very unfortunate. You know, Australia is one of our critical Five Eyes partners, and I think the Australian government is wiser than other governments, and they don't have the same needs as other governments. Again, we have a phenomenal intelligence sharing partnership, and we've had a great partnership throughout the decades. I think what's important to note is that the global community understands that Donald Trump is out of control. He's a tyrant. He presents himself as a mobster. He's certainly a toxic leader. And I think what he is doing is more than an embarrassment to our country.
Will you be subpoenaing Mike Pompeo now as a witness in the impeachment investigation? You already subpoenaed documents from him, but now that you know he heard the phone call, does he become a material witness?
With respect to my chairman, Adam Schiff, and my friend Adam Schiff, that's a question best directed toward Adam.
Matt Miller, I want to get your reaction to the Attorney General's conduct, having worked for an Attorney General yourself.
You know, I think everything about this probe that he's launched is deeply troubling. The revelations today just add to it. I think you have to go back to the beginning of this investigation and realize, you know, this investigation looks nothing like a normal DOJ probe. It is not a criminal investigation because there's no credible evidence of criminal wrongdoing. You can't just start criminal investigations for no reason. It's not an IG investigation. It appears that it is just the Attorney General operating outside the normal DOJ channels to kind of, you know, roam around the world, roam around the intelligence community, looking for ways to smear the people the president sees as his political opponents, the intelligence community and the FBI. And when you add to that the way the Attorney General is spending so much time personally involved in this, you know, I attended dozens of meetings with foreign officials with Attorney General Holder. I went to multiple countries. He never once flew to a country just to pressure them on one specific investigation, as it appears Attorney General Barr did here last week. And then you add on top of that him enlisting the president to pressure foreign countries when the underlying investigation relates to the president's conduct itself. The president shouldn't be anywhere near this investigation. You add all of these up, and I think there are reasons to be deeply concerned about the independence of the Justice Department. When you see an investigation not operating the way investigations are usually operated at DOJ, that usually means that there's something wrong at the bottom.
Nick, we saw Republican senators last week, days after the record of the phone call came out, and then also days after the whistleblowers report came out, running down the hallways in Washington saying, "Oh, I haven't read it. I haven't read it." There's Mike Pompeo pretending he doesn't know anything about this, and we now know he was listening to the call.
I found this staggering because it wasn't only in that one interview that he said that. This was his line repeatedly. And look, what's important here is not only that he was dissembling, but it underscores the impression that Mike Pompeo was complicit in this much larger pattern for months in essentially the privatizing of our policy toward Ukraine, to make it a Trump personal policy of extortion toward President Zelensky, really overlapping with the Russian aim, both of cooling American policy toward Ukraine and also cutting off military aid, which also benefits Russia. But I think also the importance of Pompeo participating in the call is that it underscores this wasn't just some routine phone call. Look, a Secretary of State is not normally a party to a call like that. That suggests that this phone call was really something that the administration regarded as a very important effort by the Trump administration to, I think, you know, to twist Zelensky's arm. And so in both dimensions, I think it's a incredibly important milestone, and it does sort of reflect a sense that this is growing and growing. You know, Bill Barr and Mike Pompeo today, and you know, Lawrence, my guess is it's going to drag in Mike Pence as well. Mike Pence was so involved in Ukraine policy from May on. He, as you know,
canceled a trip there.
Exactly. So his trip, he was supposed to attend the Zelensky inauguration. That was canceled as a way of putting pressure on Ukraine. Well, I mean, he must have known that his trip was canceled. He must have known the reason why. Then on September 1st, he met with President Zelensky. Surely Zelensky raised the question of why military aid had been suspended. What did he say in response to that? Then again, he spoke by phone with Zelensky on September 18th. Clearly, there must have been some discussion of that military assistance. I would really like to know what Pompeo told him.
Congressman Carson, the question of what Pompeo knew, when did he know it, who did he tell, as Nick just mentions, that seems to be becoming an increasingly important question. You might get a lot of information in these depositions that you now have scheduled with members of the State Department who've been involved in this, former ambassador to Ukraine, for example, and those are coming up fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have a very capable staff of former prosecutors and members of the intelligence community who will be a part of that line of questioning. There are those of us who are representatives who are scheduled to have our own hearing on Friday, and many more to come, in fact. But during this recess, Lawrence, I think it's very important to note that the American people are looking to Congress to do the right thing. The Founding Fathers were complicated, as we know, but they were very brilliant in setting up three separate but equal branches of government. And I think Congress has a duty, and I've been urging Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians to urge their representatives to do the right thing and hold this administration accountable.
And Matt Miller, we also have reports, the Washington Post, of saying Barr had already made overtures to the British intelligence officials last week. The Attorney General traveled to Italy. So now we have trying to get help from Britain, trying to get help from Italy, trying to get help from Australia. And, of course, the inevitable report that the Trump phone call with Australia's Prime Minister was also, the record of that, the rough transcript of that, was also put in the highly restricted, locked up spot in the White House for these for what they did with the Ukraine call.
Yeah, you see the president trying to conceal what he was doing here, the president's staff trying to conceal what the president was doing. And then you also saw the attorney general's staff trying to conceal his trip to Italy. You know, every time the attorney general leaves the country, the Justice Department traditionally announces it to the press. We did that in the Obama administration. It's been the practice for years. And up until now, until last week, it was the practice of this administration. Something about this trip made them decide that they wanted to keep it secret and not tell the press. And we now find out it was because he's on this campaign, but with the Italians, with the English, with the Australians, to convince them to help smear the intelligence community and the FBI. And I think you have to, when you worry about the damage that can be done here, you know, intelligence officials know what the president wants to hear. They know what the attorney general wants to hear. And when you see the way the president has retaliated against the Ukrainian government when they didn't initially launch the investigation that he wanted, you have to wonder if these other officials are going to try to produce something to make the president happy, or if they see evidence of interference in the next election, whether they're going to hold it back and not come forward, and that's deeply concerning.
Nick, one thing I'm stunned by the behavior of Mike Pompeo and William Barr, especially where it is on the calendar. We're possibly 18 months away from a new Justice Department run by a Democratic Attorney General who's empowered to investigate everything they've been doing. And for anyone who lived through the Nixon experience, the idea that an Attorney General would go near to the edges of this kind of behavior, or a Secretary of State, is just stunning.
I mean, I had the same sensation. I mean, I remember in high school, being glued to the Watergate hearings, and it's this same sense of an administration that has no sense of accountability, has no sense that there's ever going to be scrutiny. The Zelensky call, I mean, Trump made from the private living, not from the Oval Office, but from the private living quarters. And I think that what is finally happening is indeed that things are catching up. And so we're seeing that with Barr and with Pompeo. And as I said, I think that Pence may be next.
The next whistle might be aimed at Mike Pence. We will see. Congressman André Carson, Nicholas Kristof, Matt Miller, thank you all for starting us off tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lawrence.